How you doing this morning?
Doing great.
Are you back from your travels? Are you?
Uh, my travels seem to never end. I have been to a lot of different places in a very short time. But it's good. I've gotten to see the world. And the world is awesome.
Yeah. So less than about 6 months ago you were here. So we made some predictions. We had a good time. You wouldn't let me force you to do a 6 month prediction because you're smarter than that. But what's changed in the last 6 months in all your travels?
Um, well, the world just keeps changing. I think the world's getting closer together. Um, okay, hang on. Um, the world's getting closer together. I think we're seeing a very interesting, tumultuous time because you're, because of Bitcoin decentralizing the world in currency, um, other things are getting decentralized too, and that is creating a, a division between the people who want the world to stay the way it is, tribal and fiefdoms and borders and all that, and the people who are moving toward this new world that's decentralized and open. And like China is putting up bigger and bigger barriers around their country, and making it so they said Bitcoin was illegal there. And then Japan said, looking at that as a major opportunity, said Bitcoin's our national currency, or one of them. And and so all those entrepreneurs are moving to Japan because they know that that's going to be a friendlier environment for the decentralized world. And so I'm thinking that this is potentially one of the greatest times in the history of the world. I think humanity is going to move to another level, and we're seeing countries in the Middle East starting to open up. We're seeing the European countries starting to realize that they've got to compete. It's interesting because Europe went from being kind of the kings of the world to the wine and cheese generation, and now they're really they're a bunch of interesting entrepreneurs there, and I'm very excited about what's happening there. And the U.S. still is a great place to be investing. It's very dynamic, and I know that down there in L.A. is one of the hot spots in the entire world for entrepreneur activity, and a lot of it's because of you.
I don't know about that. I appreciate the kind words. I think it's more because of you than because of me. That's for sure. You've spent a lot of time out here. No, I mean even when we first met was at Amplify, and you were a big proponent of that. And it's guys like that a few years ago, sort of after the MySpace craziness in LA, bringing a ton of talent. So I'll attribute much more of it to that than me. That's for sure. Um, but you also I wanted to hit. You were just recently also in South America, and I would love to hear about South America and how that feels from an entrepreneurial environment, and especially, of course, Bitcoin, crypto, and blockchain.
A lot of it's interesting. Different countries in South America are different, and I'll give you this in a couple of different ways. I went to Chile and Argentina. Chile is very exciting and very dynamic. The Sebastian Pinera, who's the president, I met with him and I congratulated him because he's got free markets running beautifully. His Santiago was kind of a dump 20 years ago when I was there, and now it's absolutely a sparkling city. Everybody seems to be working. Everybody is moving, dynamic. It's exciting. They don't have any homeless. I mean, the whole thing seems amazing. And I credit that to him. He has opened the markets, freed people to innovate, and some great things are happening there. He's getting a lot of immigration because of startup Chile and all the things that he's done. And so when I went and met with him, he asked me, well, what can we do to make, Chile a better place or whatever? And I said, just keep doing what you're doing. And then I went to Argentina, and Argentina has some unbelievably brilliant scientific minds that are working on some extraordinary entrepreneurial activities. And I went in and met with the president of Argentina, Macri, and he is a wonderful guy and doing as much as he can, I believe, but I had a few ideas for him. Argentina has this problem in that the Argentinian peso just drops 30% a year like clockwork. And it had just dropped the day I was there significantly. And so what I did was I said, okay, last time I was here, I met with him 2 years ago. I said, last time I was here, I told you all about Bitcoin. And he said, yeah, I vaguely remember that. And then I said, okay, so Bitcoin during the last 2 years has gone from 10,000. By the way, I was there when it hit 10,000 for the first time. And I said, it's gone from 10,000 down to about 4,000. Now, of course, it's up to about 5,200. And he said, yeah. And then I said, and the Argentinian peso during that same time has dropped from 7.5 cents to 2.5 cents. And I said, so let's make a bet. We'll bet that if I win the bet, no, if you win the bet, I owe you a Bitcoin and I will double my investment in Argentina. And he goes, okay, that sounds good. And I said, and okay, but if I win the bet, you owe me the equivalent in pesos, and I will, and you have to make Bitcoin a national currency. And he looks at me like, oh God, who is this crazy American coming telling me Bitcoin? And then I said, the way Japan did. And all of a sudden he went, what? And I said, yeah, call the president of Japan and figure this out. Figure out how to do it here. And he said, we will do the, and he said, okay, we're going to do that. And he went and got his minister to go check with a minister in Japan to figure out how it's all done. And he didn't shake on the deal, but I did end up shaking his hand at the end of the meeting. So I think
that's close enough.
Deal.
I love it. Yeah, that's close enough for sure. I think that, you have a meeting, you discuss things, you agree, you shook hands at the end. I think that's a deal, right? I mean, come on. Somewhere in between saying it and then the shaking hands, he didn't say no, right?
Well, I'm not going to hold him to it, but I think he should. I mean, then I told him, look, I said, look, the internet here is horrible. I'm in one of your best hotels, and the internet doesn't work at all. It's just horrible. And then I said, and I went to a restaurant. Internet didn't work there either very well. I said, what you should do is forget about all your infrastructure spending. Take that money and do 5G with it. And then you can tell entrepreneurs that you've got the most advanced communication system and the most advanced currency. And all the entrepreneurs are going to flock to your country. But as it is, you're losing them. And as I know, because we've funded a couple from Argentina and they've moved up to the Silicon Valley. And he took it all under advisement.
I mean, that would be amazing.
I hope they vote him back in November. He's
I mean, he sounds like he's open. And one of the themes, actually, before I ask this question, if anybody does want to ask Tim a question, we'll try to get a few in, and we'll try to kind of make the second half of this like an AMA kind of thing, because it'll be more fun. And Tim, you don't get to see me. I'm sitting up on stage by myself, like It's just weird. So they all get to see you on the screen. So hopefully they're looking at you and not me sitting here. It's fun. But yeah, if a few of you want to ask questions, there's a microphone right over here. But Tim, so this actually goes a common theme. So we did Security Token Summit yesterday, and we've been talking about this kind of stuff a lot. And what's funny is I know you have to have some good stories about this. So one of the people I recently talked to was talking about how, you know, people are not are very, very skeptical to look at Bitcoin and blockchain because they hear, you know, people that don't understand it talking about it being a scam and all these things. But then once they finally get somebody to go down the rabbit hole and actually research, you know, you have like a 99% rate of people becoming obsessed with it and becoming, you know, full, all bought in. What's been a good story of someone you've convinced finally that's dived in, or maybe you were surprised that they were so excited by it?
Oh, I think the best story is Jamie Dimon, because he's the first one who said it was a scam, and he's the president of J.P. Morgan. And they said it was a scam, and then they started to get nervous because they saw that it was very important currency for a lot of people. And then they said, well, nobody can use it, use a J.P. Morgan credit card to buy Bitcoin, and of course that totally backfired. And then he said, well, we're going to create our own token. And so it was, he went from being a disbeliever to a total believer. And I never actually talked to him directly, but boy, I'm sure I had an effect. And he, you know, he was doing all the things that you do when you discover you have cancer. You know, it's like denial and going through whatever, and depression and whatever else. And then he finally resolved to accept it. And the acceptance was in deciding to do a token of his own. But he still doesn't get it, because he's got his token is centralized on a centralized currency. So it's like, why would you do that? Decentralized currency is so much more valuable to people. If you're in Sudan and you're trying to get, and you're a refugee, you go from Sudan to Greece, and you're now a refugee. If you have Sudanese money, it's worthless in Greece. Yeah. But if you have Bitcoin, you just go right across the border, you start your life again, everything's good. Same thing is the case if you're stuck with whatever currency the J.P. Morgan guys tie their token to. They're going to tie it to some political currency, and they're going to get the same thing. And it's just going to even be more centralized because J.P. Morgan has a hand in it, as does the government, some government, whether it's the U.S. government or some other. I think we're all better off using a decentralized token, and that Bitcoin, you know, looks like it's the one that's going to be the big survivor.
Yeah, I think though you do agree though that J.P. Morgan doing the coin is good all around though from a marketing and acceptance perspective though. I think a lot of people who were dismissing it look at that and, oh wow, J.P. Morgan is doing it, even if they don't understand that it's really not anything, you know, that special from a technology standpoint or from the actual currency standpoint. You know, I think people look at it and think of it as, you know, guys like my older brother, he's a wealth manager for, you know, does IRAs and things like that for a lot of older people. They started calling him and going, that thing your brother does it's being accepted by J.P. Morgan now.
It's funny. I know that it's going to be interesting because the whole financial system is going to change, and you're going to see people who figure out how to adapt with it, and people who want to cling to the past. And I, you know, I'm a believer that down the road, you know, governments are going to either accept or reject ways of doing business. But the ones who accept it are going to be the big winners for the next 40 years. And I'm thinking of venture capital. As a venture capitalist, I'm thinking I want to be able to accept Bitcoin and then invest with Bitcoin, and then have the companies, the startups, pay their employees and their suppliers in Bitcoin, and then have that whole food chain completely on a smart contract. And that way, there's no accounting, no legal that needs to happen. So the accountants and lawyers can add value in other ways. And the companies don't have to worry about all the time wasted in doing an audit, or we as venture capitalists don't have to worry about all our distributions. We get a merger happens in one of our portfolio companies. We can immediately send that right down through a waterfall to the LP investors. I think that's the future, and it is so much better and so much easier that we're gonna have a time where the friction, the bureaucratic friction in companies becomes much less, and that can grow an economy at a faster rate. So this is an amazing, exciting time.
Obviously, most of the room here is bought in and excited on that future. It also is. I'm going to remind people. You guys have a chance now to ask Tim a question. So get a couple more lined up. But we did talk about this actually, and some of the ideas at STS yesterday about smart securities and taking these investment contracts and creating sort of smart contracts for investments where dividends can be paid even daily to a wallet, right? So and in crypto. So imagine this world, and one of the things that was really interesting that I know that one of our speakers, David Wheel, who's the former vice chairman of NASDAQ, explained that there are the bond markets realized that if they calculate interest monthly instead of quarterly, those bonds traded at a 3% premium. So not just the fact that and first of all, that has to be done by accountants and audits and checks in the mail and a ton of bureaucracy, and imagine if it could be done daily or on the minute, and literally your wallet just grows in numbers because you made an investment, and what that means to the whole world, especially if there are no borders. I think that world can exist now with technology. It's just getting past the bureaucracy, right? Tim needs to meet with more leaders.
You can take that to, you guys are near Hollywood. Imagine when you watch a Star Wars movie, you see 15,000 names come down. Each of them gets a check in the mail, maybe quarterly, for some amount of money. And some of those checks, they cost Lucasfilm about $7.50 to send, and they might be checks for $2.22. Lucasfilm could save a fortune by using Bitcoin, and they can make it so that money can, when somebody buys one Star Wars ticket, that all the fractions of a penny that go to all those people can happen immediately, directly into their Bitcoin wallet. And so you don't have to wait around for all the lawyers to fight it out for you to get some small morsel of whatever you did for the Star Wars movie. And so Hollywood should be embracing this Bitcoin in a big way, because that can totally change their business and make it much more honest and transparent.
Absolutely.
And will get paid in real time.
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of that, I know a lot of you may have been to some recent events, and Tim, Richard Wolpert from Amplify, for example, he wrote a book recently, and one of the chapters was about monkey points in the entertainment industry. And monkey points are when the executives, the producers want to give an actor or somebody, they want points, but they don't want to actually give them points. So they give them, a percentage of some amount that ends up being, the profits or something, and then they use creative accounting to say that the film lost money. So one of the good examples of that, I think, was like Forrest Gump. They explained that Forrest Gump was like one of the biggest losses for the year or something, which clearly is one of the biggest movies of all time. So this kind of stuff could actually make those things transparent, and every single person who works on it would get to actually audit it, not just, paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to KPMG or some auditor to do it.
Yeah, I think this is a new way. And I would think anybody honest in Hollywood would really embrace this, because they know that their reputation is so bad. They need to shape it up, and this is a great way to do it.
I agree. So let's
pay everybody Bitcoin.
Yeah. So I love it. Let's get into some questions. Do you have a question? You want to do it?
Yes.
Okay.
I do.
Tim, can you hear that, Tim, by the way, or should I repeat it?
I can hear.
Okay.
Great to meet you, Tim. My name's Jin. I wanted to talk about your thoughts on putting art provenance on the blockchain. Collectible art, collectible watches, wines. Some people are saying that it could open up $25 trillion of asset-backed lending globally. Then there's other exciting projects where you just spoke about film profits on blockchain. But I think one of the biggest opportunities is music on the blockchain. There's companies like Vest, which allow people to buy fractional ownership of songs and earn royalties on it. All royalties are on the blockchain. What are your thoughts on some of those type of use cases?
Well, music would work exactly the way I described movies. I mean, and the music industry has also been notorious about, not paying or having monkey points or whatever. And so that's perfect. I think all forms of art can be managed this way. And I actually think more people would want to invest in art or movies or music or whatever, and they could make small investments and feel like they participated in a movie, and that would actually help the movie, because they'd go out and they'd tell all their friends, go watch my movie. I think that as long as the SEC ends up figuring out how to be okay with it, that could end up being a great thing. And then all assets, so it's not just art, it could be real estate, any form of asset that could be broken into lots of small shares, I think has the potential to really benefit from being tokenized, put into Bitcoin or another kind of token. And I think that may end up being one of the most exciting areas if the SEC realizes how important it is to open up.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things, we have to be quick, so we'll move on to the next question. But one of the things that when I first met Tim, I was doing a company called Invested In, and the biggest actual the inspiration to it was a German company that was helping people raise money for bands on MySpace, and I worked at MySpace at the time, called Band. And you could pay $10, I think it was, or $25 a person. When the band hit $50,000, they went into the studio. Everyone who participated got a piece of it and was supposed to own a piece, but I think very quickly they got in trouble because it wasn't really legal because of SEC type of rules and things like that. But my idea at the time was, well, I'm in a punk band. For $1,000, we could print 1,000 CDs. Let's just do it where every person gives $1, because we don't want to make money. We just want people to hear what we do. And so it opens up these kind of models. And of course, you want the ownership to go to the community, because that's the whole spirit of what we're doing here. So let's grab the next question. Let's try to speed through them, because we have Pomp and Charlie Lee coming on stage next, and Tim's got to get back to business.
Hi, thank you so much. Hi, Tim. I'm Jeremy Culver. It's nice to meet you. I'm co-CEO of a social media app Bayview that runs on the quantum blockchain, and I know that team met at Draper University. We were actually the first film in history to release a feature film using blockchain technology. And what we ran into was a tokenomics problem, was that digital scarcity meant the price of the film was $5.99 one day, $3.99 the other day, which really either upset the consumer or upset the actual filmmaker or the distributor. And so what we realized is that until Bitcoin can act more like a currency and less like a commodity, we were looking for ways that we can peg the value to the real world. And the conclusion we came to is using stable coins, and thinking that that's an intermediary between the value created in a token economy or a token ecosystem to the real world. Do you believe that's true? And how long, if so, how long will we need that intermediary until we can go to a completely decentralized global currency like Bitcoin?
You know, I think I'm not sure that's the best use of a stable coin, but because you might as well just use dollars, because you're tying it to the dollar. And I think the dollar is centralized, just as all other political currencies are centralized. And I think that when you get involved in something like that, I don't think any of them would have complaints if Bitcoin were on a tear going up while that was going on. They just complain when it goes down. And I think over time, that Bitcoin, other currencies probably too, will become more and more stable. But I think that Bitcoin is, at 5,200 is a long way from stable. If Bitcoin has 5% of the market share of currencies of the world, it's worth $250,000. So I think what's happened is people are just holding on, and they're not using it as a currency. It will stabilize when they start using it as a currency, and then it'll be a better way to go. And I think that's great that you tried using tokens for a movie. I think it's fantastic. I think that's admirable. And you were on the right track. You were early, and you were probably one of the pioneers with the arrows in your back. But I think stable coins are kind of interesting when they are tied to commodities like oil or real estate or whatever. When they're tied to fiat political currencies, I am less positive about it, because why not just use that currency and not worry about it? It's like much ado about nothing.
Yeah, thank you. I think we've got time for one last quick question. So I'm sorry, guys that are in line. We'll do it again, or I'll find a way to ask Tim the questions after. Maybe we'll do a podcast or something. So go on.
Good morning, Tim. I'm Jennifer Clossy, and on the board of directors of a blockchain company that looks globally. And one of the things that is a big issue is the gap between the acceptance from the establishment, and that includes the different governments around the world, as you alluded to earlier, as well as the acceptance of the public. And one of the things I'd like to know is, has there been a successful management audit of something that has been conducted entirely on a blockchain system that is in compliance with the governmental regulations of the United States? In that if that made news, that would be a big item of boosting public confidence. Your comments, please, sir?
It's pretty interesting. And it's one of those things that has to change in the public perception, because the great thing about the blockchain is it requires no audit. And that's where the auditors are saying, wait, we can't use this because then our job goes away. And so I know this is crazy. I talked to my accountants about this sort of thing, and they figured out how they could basically double their fees around me just using Bitcoin for the currency used in my venture business. And because what they would do is they would take the Bitcoin, They would transfer it to dollars. Then they do the whole audit, and then they go back to Bitcoin and do the audit sort of again, but knowing that the blockchain's already done the audit. It's, we just have to recognize that some jobs out there and some regulations are going to be extinct, and people will have to adjust and move on and grow and evolve, and those people will be much more productive members of society, and we will, as a society, become much more productive. Thank you guys so much. I'm late for a call. I'm going to have to go.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks, Tim.